I'd like to call our meeting to order here tonight here for the Cadillac Planning Commission here for September 24th, 2018. If anyone does have a cell phone, if you could please turn it off so it doesn't disrupt Judd over there and our videoing, please. And then the next thing I'd have you do, if you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Coy, are you our roll call person?
Sure, I'll handle that tonight. Filkins.
Here.
Smith. Peterson.
Yes.
Bunce.
Here.
Gregg.
Here.
Bauman.
Here.
Fent.
Here.
Putvin.
Here. Perfect. Thank you. At this stage, if I could have an approval here for this evening's agenda, again for September 24th, 2018.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Ms. Filkins and Joe. Joe's easier for me, sorry.
Gregg.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Filkins.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes. Next, I just need approval here of our last meeting of August 27th, 2018. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read that.
I'll move their approval.
Bauman? Second,
Second.
please. Mr. Bunce?
Bauman.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Filkins.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Gregg.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes. Thank you. So this evening, we do have a public hearing. This public hearing is to consider a request from PS Equities Incorporated, Mr. Phil Seibert, for a special land use to allow construction of Cadillac Castles, a proposed senior living apartment building consisting of 46 apartment units on South Mitchell Street. Having read that, I'll turn this over to staff at this time. Correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
I will give a overview of my staff report, and then you would be in a position to open the public hearing for public comment. A little bit of background for the project. This property is located on South Mitchell Avenue. It's kind of as you approach the downtown from the south. It is on the west side of Mitchell, between Cottage Street and Granite Street. Immediately to the north, you have the Dollar General retail store. To the south, you have a new real estate office that used to be Hagstrom's Floral. And then also you have the Willow Mercantile, which is just south of the real estate office. The property is entirely zoned B3, which is a general business district. And final element for this project that you should be aware of is the applicant is also filing an application in October to receive low-income housing tax credits for the project. So it will have a diversity of incomes. Some will be lower, but it will also have 20% market rate units in the project. The proposed use is for a senior apartment building, 46 units. The age limitation is 55, although talking with Phil, it's more typical to see people in the 60 and 70 range bracket for that age group. The site is 1.4 acres in size. He is consolidating, I believe, 7 parcels to unify the site into a more easier to develop site. With those mini parcels, it would be difficult to do any type of development that would be consistent with the zoning in that location. The site is currently vacant with the exception of one single-family home. That one single-family home has been used commercially on the lower floor. I think somewhat recently there was a tattoo parlor in that structure. I think the upstairs was used for a residential apartment. And so that one building that would be on the site would be demolished to allow that space to be added in with the development property. These photos just give you some visual of what we're looking at. You can see in the foreground, it starts right off with the sidewalk so that you can see the general layout. You can see some former pavement areas. Some of the developments in the area show that it was more of a historic downtown development with very limited setbacks. You see the home probably has about a 5 or 7 foot setback, and then this would be the proposed style of the building that would be going in on the site. And this is a project that the applicant had done in Clare, Michigan. I'll have more photos of that later. The Hagstrom's building is built almost with a 0 setback. So two of the existing structures in the immediate area are not consistent with the zoning's current setback requirements. I then looked into the land use analysis, and you will all have this information probably even in more detail in the staff report, but I didn't want to take a lot of time, but I wanted to cover the main topics of what is around the site. As I mentioned, the site is on the southern fringe of downtown. It is a very walkable site, and that's one of the things that made it attractive to the developer, the high walkability score to both pharmacies and grocery stores and so forth. And the site is in a zoning district which permits the broadest range of commercial uses, and those would be light commercial uses all the way to heavy commercial uses everywhere from retail stores to warehouses to health facilities and so forth. And I got into quite a bit of detail in the range of uses that would be permitted in that district in the staff report. To the immediate north, you have the Dollar General store. The types of things on their site that are closest to the apartment site include a loading zone, drainage retention area, and service drive. And I have some photos of that. That shows the dumpster enclosure, the unloading that was actually happening to be going on when I was there. And in the foreground before the Dollar General truck, you also have some auto parking at that location. That auto parking is roughly 19 feet from the property line. This would be sort of on the west side of the Dollar General site, the drainage area that runs out to Aspen Street. There are 2 drainage areas, one on the north side of the driveway and one to the south of the driveway. And I believe they're part of an interconnected system that handles drainage for the area. And there you can see the access service drive. You're looking towards Mitchell, I believe, here, and that connects directly to Aspen Street as well. The Aspen Street is not a designated truck route. However, in checking with Ken Payne, was told that generally there's no enforcement on trucks on Aspen because of the direct connects between the commercial businesses and Aspen Street. So it's not a situation that has undergone any type of enforcement. Here you can see the Hagstrom's. Again, as I mentioned, it's built right out to the property line. That is being used by I believe the company's name is Assist to Sell. The letter that I just handed out this evening came in today, and it was from Kathy Loy, and it was a short letter generally in support of the project. The Willow Mercantile has been a fairly, it's not real new, but it's old enough that everybody's used to it and probably acquainted with the type of retail they do. There's a lot of specialty food products. They also run a fair amount of landscape sales out of the back, greenhouse-looking building. And there is also some piles of landscape materials, mulch, and maybe some soils and some other things towards the Aspen side of the project site. On the opposite side of the street and across Mitchell Street, you of course have the Dairy Queen. A little bit south of the Dairy Queen, you have a billboard use in the JK Auto Brokers business. And then along Aspen, you have a series of, on Aspen and the other adjoining side streets, including Pollard, you have a variety of both single and duplex homes. Some are rental, some are home ownership homes. And this is just to give you some idea of the housing stock that is out there. It's not all of the houses that are out there. I wanted to talk a little bit about B3. B3 was written to be the broadest commercial district that the city has. It, again, if you refer to the staff report, allows the commercial uses that are allowed in the B1, the B2, the tourist service districts, and some of the other districts as well. And hence it is the broadest commercial district we have. And also by virtue of being specifically written into the special use section, it was also anticipated that it may be used for multiple family development as well. As you can see here, the site is highlighted in the red box. You can see it's right in a B3 district that's located along Mitchell. Both sides of Mitchell are in the B3 zoning. To the west of the project site, where the single family homes are located, you have RM2 zoning district, which is intended to be probably our most targeted district for multiple family development, including apartments and condominiums. And then, of course, to the west of that is the RM1, where you have the Harbor View apartment building off of Holly Road, and also abutting the trail. But it kind of gives you kind of a context for how the site is factored in with the surrounding zoning districts. Here's a picture of the Harbor View, which is in the RM1 district. Of course, that's a little bit larger than the project that's proposed under this zoning, but it's showing a six-floor apartment building. I wanted to get a little bit into the site plan, and you have in your packets that were distributed and also put on your table in front of you, you should have some folded up 11 by 17s. Also, the large version is on the tripod there. Essentially, the site, the building would be positioned kind of at the southeast corner of the property. The majority of the parking and the access aisle would be on the north side of the property. The darker, heavier lines that you see are parking areas, and the darker lines are carport parking, And where you see the parking spaces without the heavier dark line, those would be parking spaces that did not have carports proposed. The fire department has reviewed the access plan, and they feel that they would not have any difficulty servicing this building with the access that it provides. The utilities for this site have been preliminarily designed, but we do not have the final design. We had kind of a unique system where there was a storm drain line that was running underneath this site, which of course would, unless it was rerouted, would render the site unbuildable. So the developer is proposing to reroute the storm drain system from its current location that's directly south of the inlet that I showed you earlier from the Dollar General retention area, reroute it to around the west end of the property, and then bring it back to the center portion of the property to connect to other retail uses that are in the area. And then eventually the line travels further east across Mitchell to service other areas. But in conversation with utilities, they believe that the general direction that the developer is going with the storm drain design is workable, and they are working on details relative to final easements and ownership of the system, which, as you'll see in the end, that I would be recommending any kind of approval be subject to working out final details relative to the storm drain design. But at this point in time, they feel that they're moving in the right direction towards a resolution that will work for the project. The final sheet that I'm showing, and you'll see kind of a sample of it in the photographs of the Clare project. If you look up against the building, there would be the perimeter landscaping around the entire building. You'll also see that they have trees located both on the east and west end of the project, as well as a few trees scattered down the access aisle directly adjacent to the building on the north side. We've reviewed the landscape as to the tree types and materials, and everything that they're proposing in the landscape plan would be consistent with what our zoning ordinance requires. Again, here's the Clare project. This is probably the closest representation to the type of building that we will be seeing here. And again, one of the reasons for not being further in the process for the actual elevations is the need to go through the application process with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and the applicant can address some of that when he has an opportunity to speak. That's another side of the building. You can see that there's some nice opportunities for the residents to have a small area on their balconies to look out over the site and the streetscape. You can get a sense of some of the landscaping and trees that are around the site at this particular location. The carports would be kind of open and airy carports. This is the carport design used for the Clare project. You can see that there's not, the openness leaves it more septhead friendly in terms of not blocking views and being able to see across the site. This internal view gives you an idea of the kind of the quality of the support structure, shows you that how it would be lighted. You see a light in the picture there. And the residents of the previous projects have all appreciated the opportunity to have the carport be part of the project as opposed to just having all open parking. In addition to the apartment units, the building would also have some communal space. That communal space would be for eating purposes, also for some activities that would be held there, essentially kind of a mini senior center, so to speak. Also in this picture you see the quality of the dumpster enclosure. It's done tastefully and hides the elements that are necessary on a project site and have to be there, but you don't want them to detract from the site. So I think they've done a fairly nice job with that. There is a need for this project to work to have some zoning variance requests. I won't get into all the detail, but I'll cover them in generality because the Zoning Board of Appeals is covering these in more depth. Essentially, this district, as with many of our other districts, has a cap of 40 feet. And I'm not sure if that has more to do with the age of the ordinance. It wasn't until the 50s that the fire department got their first aerial truck. And I believe some of the higher apartment projects that were built in town, being Kirtland Terrace and Harborview, I believe took place in the 60s. Obviously following the ability to service those buildings with the aerial truck. And we have since upgraded our capacity with regard to the aerial equipment that could service an apartment building. So one of the things that would be needed to get to a fourth floor for this building would be a 15-foot height variance. The developer is also seeking 5-foot setback variance on the carports. This may or may not ultimately be needed, but as he works towards final design and final drainage approval, just on the case that perhaps he needed additional space in some location to work out those details, wanted the ability to have that flexibility in the design. That would not be on the Mitchell Street side, so it wouldn't affect the view from Mitchell Street. And you saw from the adjacencies that some of the carports, on the north side, would basically be facing the loading zone for Dollar General and also a wooded retention area for Dollar General. And there would be one of the carports that would be facing Aspen Street. But again, there would be an ability to landscape and have trees buffer that carport facility. And as you could see in the pictures, we're not looking at something that's terribly unattractive as to the carports. Another thing I took a look at is, was the project consistent with the master plan? And in 2 locations, the master plan specifically addressed the issue of this type of project and this type of location. And it said, the master plan recommends medium to high density apartments within or near the central business district. It also says the master plan states that of particular importance is that of increasing its position as a residential setting. So the master plan recognizes the importance and the linkage of the value to the commercial district of driving up residential density close to the downtown district. We've also, in recent years, been party to a number of studies. 2 of the more recent ones. One was prepared or funded by Networks Northwest for Wexford County, and it was done in November of 2014. I think it identified something like countywide a need for 2,000 apartment units. Now that's the entire county. More recently, we've had a housing market analysis done by Community Research Services, and that was part of recent efforts by our new Regional Economic Development Group, Alliance for Economic Success, and they studied this area and identified not only a need for apartment units, which at a minimum would start out with 60 units per year, but they also identified that the senior apartment rentals were probably the strongest demand within the city limits. So that was important to know. The final thing is just kind of walking through the standards for the ordinance that we're walking through individual standards that the Planning Commission needs to address in making any kind of decision on this project, and those standards in any motion to approve, you would need to document in the motion that the standards you felt were met for the project. And so in that regard, I guess I'll just walk through them, but if you wanted to kind of follow along in your staff report, these are the kind of things that would get kind of lengthy to do in the slides, but I'll just quickly read through it. The first one is the special land use shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in a manner harmonious with the character of adjacent property and the surrounding area. And then my report on that is that the proposed site is zoned B3 General Business District. This district is intended for the broadest range of commercial uses from light to heavy commercial. This district also identifies multiple family housing as an acceptable use by special use permit. The proposed senior apartment building would be harmonious with the character of adjacent property. This project would produce an added customer base for both the Willow Mercantile, the Dollar General store to the north. It would also add customer base for the nearby Rite Aid Pharmacy and Family Fare grocery store. B, the special land use shall not inappropriately change the essential character of surrounding area. And in this regard, it's not saying it shouldn't change the character. It says it shouldn't change inappropriately the character. In other words, if it's a change towards what the plans say or towards what the zoning expresses as the right direction for this area, then that might be a positive change. The proposed project would not inappropriately change the character of the surrounding area. The site is surrounded by some fairly intense commercial uses, including the Dollar General, Willow Mercantile, Dairy Queen, and JK Auto Brokers. While this project may be larger in scale, it will be less intense in terms of traffic, activity, and noise. At present, the site appears in a state of flux with vacant property, developed land, and a single-family home being mixed in with other retail uses. The proposed project will create a sense of more order and harmony of design for the area. C, the special land use shall not interfere with the general enjoyment of adjacent property. The proposed use will not interfere with the general enjoyment of adjacent property. The site is self-contained and will not move traffic onto adjoining properties. The project, being a 46-unit senior apartment project, will not generate a significant amount of traffic. The average age of the residents based on similar projects will likely be in the upper 70s. The total number of parking spaces for the project is 56 spaces. The project will be a quiet residential use. And I had the opportunity to visit the Clare facility, and in the time that I spent there, I was there for about 2 hours, noticed very little traffic coming and going from the facility. The special land use shall represent an improvement to the use or character of the property under consideration and surrounding area in general, yet also be in keeping with the natural environment of the site. The proposed special land use project will represent an improvement to the use and character of the property under consideration. The applicant is proposing to build an attractive building that fits in with both the zoning and master plan designations. This project will move this block closer to a full development pattern which it enjoyed in years gone by. The building materials to be used for the project will be an improvement over some of the other buildings in the area. The project also solves a housing need in the community and in an area recommended by recent housing market analysis. E, the special land use shall not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment which will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, odor, fumes, or glare. This project, as a quiet senior apartment building, will not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment which will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, odor, fumes, or glare. The project, being a senior apartment building, has half the parking demand of an open-age apartment building. The site has direct access to a major street, South Mitchell, which is dramatically under traffic capacity. The current traffic count for South Mitchell is approximately 14,000 vehicles per day, with a capacity of between 20 and 30,000 vehicles per day. Aspen Street would likely see an increase in traffic, but it would likely be limited to people looking for a signalized intersection with South Mitchell during busy times of the day. Based on the potential number of trip ends per day of 2.5 per apartment, there would only be 115 trip ends per day. Distributing these trips over a 16-hour period would not jeopardize the function of either Aspen Street or South Mitchell Street. F, the special land use shall be adequately served by essential public service facilities and services, or it shall be demonstrated that the person responsible for the special land use shall be able to continually provide adequately for the services and facilities deemed essential for the special land use under consideration. This special land use will be adequately served by essential public facilities and services. The developer has been meeting with our utility department and reviewing water and sanitary sewer connections, as well as redesigning a storm sewer system. The city's utility department has indicated there won't be a capacity issue with serving this development. Likewise, our fire department has reviewed the plans and has indicated that they can adequately serve this building as proposed. The fire department has also approved of the site plan as it relates to fire access. G, the special land use shall not place demands on public services and facilities in excess of current capacity. Again, as stated above, we will not exceed current capacity in serving this development. H, the special land use shall be consistent with the intent and purpose of this ordinance and the objectives of the currently adopted long-range comprehensive plan. As discussed in the above analysis, this project is consistent with both the city's zoning ordinance and master plan. It also addresses our housing needs as identified by 2 recent marketing studies. And that's kind of my review, taking a look at both our ordinance, our market studies, our master plan, and other studies connected to the area. And I do have a recommended motion, but I guess we can look at, I have some conditions if you were to consider approval to be added to that. We can either look at those now or after the public hearing if you'd like.
After is probably fine. Do we have to be concerned with the amount of the lot coverage? I know all this is going to the
Right. Well,
planning
I might as well
board.
put up my conditions because we're leading right to them anyway.
Leading to it. Okay, well, you didn't hit on that is all, and
Well, I am recommending a motion to approve, and basically the conditions is that any condition of approval would have to be based upon the final acceptance by our utility department of the storm drain design receiving appropriate easements or ownership rights to the utilities that they're going to be expected to maintain. Also that, the storm drain design standards that we designed to, the 10-year storm would be complied with. That any required permit at the state or federal level that might relate to floodplain issues would be secured. That the variance requests that are under consideration by the city's zoning board of appeals be satisfactorily resolved in accordance with the board's decision, which means that might be as proposed, or they might reach some mutual agreed to variances that in between what's asked for and whatever is decided by the board. So I didn't want to tie the hands to say as presented, but merely say as they mutually agree to and reach a decision with the zoning board of appeals. And then finally, that because this curb cut for the access does involve a state highway, it would normally require that MDOT review in detail the radii of the entry to the driveway and the width, and making sure that they're not taking any water into their system and so forth. And so that would also be a requirement of any approval that you might want to make. And then, of course, any other things that you felt might be important in meeting the conditions that we kind of walked through, that would be other things that you could consider putting into any motion for approval.
I also see that there's only 2 handicap places. I don't know if that's low based on the age of, and you have more experience, Phil, of course, but it's just a question. I mean, sometimes older folks need those handicap. I don't know, I just see we have 2. Just counting on my end right now, but, okay. Want to open public hearing, guys? Yes, okay. Good, everybody good? Okay. At this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, unless you have any questions right now for staff. I'll go ahead and open public hearing if there's people here to speak in favor of the proposed development to come forwards. State your name and write down an address for privacy reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Phil Seibert, 608 East Bluegrass Road, Mount Pleasant. So I was here last month,
Yes, sir.
okay, introduced the project, so I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm really here this evening to answer any questions you might have, but as sort of a follow-up to John's comments, and I think he presented a very well-done report. But the project, and again, I've looked at your ordinance a bit. I drove up and down Mitchell Street again this evening when I came into town. It just strikes me that it is the right place for this sort of project. We want to be near the downtown core, and it's about as close as I could find a site to. It's consistent with your zoning ordinance as it's currently zoned. It coincides with what's talked about in your master plan. And we've got 2 recent market studies, relatively recent, that document the need. I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a market. I came here because of the most recent study, and my friend Kelly Murdoch, who I've used for years as a consultant, called and told me he was doing a presentation, and I drove up for it. So I became convinced after reviewing his study that there indeed is a market here. Frankly, there's a market everywhere for affordable senior housing. There just is. It doesn't matter where I build it, it fills. So anyways, consistent with your zoning ordinance, consistent with your master plan, we've got market studies that document the need. I personally believe, as John has written up, it does meet the standards for the grant of a special use permit. And on the site plan, we do need some variances. I could probably get away from the lot density one, but that means having 46 residents with no carports in Cadillac, Michigan. I don't think that's a good decision. I think that's a bad decision. And we're talking about carports. On the setback issue, we currently meet the setback lines. We're not in violation of those setback lines as shown on that site plan. The quandary that I'm having is until we have an opportunity to get soil borings and do a final analysis of the positioning of that building, we may need a little flux in maneuvering that building and then having to push the parking spots of the carports one direction or another a little bit. I just don't know that at this date, and I'm trying to avoid coming. If we don't need that variance, we aren't going to use them. We'll comply, and you can put that on the record. If we can comply with the setbacks, we will. We just want a little maneuvering room if we need it. The height is what it is. I need 4 stories. I can soften that a little bit by going to a hip roof. It's what we did in St. John's, and that's one option we can look at. And the
what
building's
does that
still a
really
great
save?
looking building,
Does
so
that really save you, though?
maybe 5 to 6 feet. You know. So anyways, I'm not going to take up a lot of your time. I'm here to answer questions, so I'm going to write my address down and sit down.
Okay. Any of the board have questions here for Phil yet? Before we, no? Bob, you good? Robert?
No.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Hi.
Hi. Conrad Ish, 828 Aspen Street, Cadillac, Michigan. You all should have copies of what I'm going to say. I don't plan to rabble on a lot. It is long, though. Good evening. Let me start by saying I'm a majority property owner in this area, and I am perplexed by the process of proper notice of public hearings. I received 7 notices of this public hearing for September 24th, the Planning Commission. The residents of my rental properties did not receive notice at all. The previous ZBA meeting was continued due to a notice issue. This was remedied by personally delivering notice to each address, thus the occupant of each address. I was doing research for another issue in Wexford County and stumbled into what seemed to be the law regarding notice, which, paraphrasing, seems to say the owner and occupant of each property within the notice radius shall receive notice. I'm confused, as it seems the Planning Commission noticed one way and the ZBA noticed another, but yet neither covered both. Quite a few of these properties noticed are non-owner occupied, both residential and commercial. It seems the intent is to notice the people affected by the decision, but yet neither the Planning Commission nor the ZBA seems to have notified both parties. I'm just asking for clarification. I've attached a plot map so you can understand my ownership interest in the area. The plot map is highlighted. Blue represents residential rental properties that I own. Yellow represents my primary residence and yard, and pink is the proposed development site. I am the owner of lots 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, the entire vacated alley, 77, 78, 81, 80, 1, and 5 on the 800 block of Aspen and 200 block of Cottage. As you can see, my ownership interest is large, and the impact to me, my tenants, my neighborhood, and my income should put heavy weight on my statement. This ownership represents years of hard work and planning, and also some luck. My primary residence is directly across the street from the proposed parking lot and main drive for the structure. The other lots represent 9 residential rental units that I own. These are my primary source of income. I purchased my primary residence in 1994 and slowly watched 2 residential structures and 1 previous commercial structure occupying the proposed development land become condemned and demolished. I've had years to consider what would be a good use of this vacant property, and there are many conforming uses that would be much less desirable to me than this proposed use, which is basically in my front yard. Over the years, my neighborhood has been up and down in terms of desirable location to live. At times, we've had drug and crime problems. Currently, we're in a school zone due to Cooley School. Between that designation and my personal rental screening, the area has improved over the years. I'm a disabled person of modest means, and I feel I've made a positive impact in this area. Over the years, I have watched infrastructure development in Cadillac as a whole, and more specifically, experienced unintended challenges due to mainly unknown variables and unintended consequences. The main drive for this proposed structure seems to make Aspen Street the main ingress and egress. This will create a significantly higher traffic volume on a street that already has a high traffic volume of cars, pedestrians, and bikes. Aspen Street is consistently utilized as the walking and driving street to avoid Mitchell Street for many people on the south end of town from other complexes on Sunnyside and Pearl Street. I note that under section 4694 that the standard is the requested variance will not unreasonably increase congestion in public streets, unquote. An MDOT study is noted for South Mitchell Street in the explanation. It is, quote, anticipated vehicles leaving the site wishing to travel south on Mitchell Street will use Aspen Street driveway and travel north to either Granite Street or south to South Street using the traffic lights for safety, end quote. I note there has been no study cited for the current traffic volume on Aspen Street, which I believe needs to be assessed. We already have a higher traffic volume than many side streets in the area. We just recently had a 2-vehicle accident occur directly in front of the proposed drive for this development. If you have ever been sitting on South Street waiting to turn left on Aspen, you would know drives create a traffic flow problem if not properly planned. There's a drive leading to the Family Fair Plaza that is just to the east of Aspen Street. It neither lines up nor jogs enough. This creates a problem. Over 50% of the time when I attempt my turn onto Aspen Street from South Street heading west, there's a car sitting on South Street with its left turn signal on, waiting to get into the Family Fair Drive. That vehicle is invariably sitting directly in my path to turn left onto Aspen. They're staring at me and waiting for me to move so they may complete their turn. I stop just before the drive so they can actually make the turn. Some people don't. Some people must expect I'm going to turn down Aspen, taking the opposing traffic's lane on the wrong side of the road so they're comfortable to make the turn. The more traffic that is pushed down Aspen Street, the worse this problem will get. Sometimes I have to sit at the end of my driveway for quite some time for an opening in traffic to leave my driveway and travel down Aspen Street. It seems that adding a drive, which by the finding's own conclusion will be the most utilized drive for a large structure, this will do nothing but increase congestion. The introduction of the Dollar General Drive on Aspen has exacerbated these traffic problems. The drive itself was built over a swampy area. The swampy area once extended through part of the proposed development property. Historically looking back, a large amount of the immediate area surrounding this property was originally swamp. It was filled in with lumber discards, trash, debris, and ash from the sawmills. Digging done anywhere around this area will reveal a layer of ash, biodegraded debris, miscellaneous trash, very old ash, sand, and clay. I'm not an environmentalist, I'm a realist, and I'm not objecting to this proposed structure based on some impact to the environment. I do, however, have concerns over infrastructure and construction plans to take these variables into account. Dollar General's drive was completed twice. The first plan caused significant impact to neighboring properties due to water management and erosion. That included flooding neighboring properties. The current drive of 6+ inch concrete has significant settling cracks and breaks. Some have dropped the surface by over 4 inches. The impact and visual appearance that some of the proposed development land is not swampy provides an unrealistic illusion. Aspen Street 3 years ago had a large sinkhole in front of my 844 Aspen Street. It was a significant sinkhole and it was remedied quickly by the city. However, again, it goes to my concerns. Pollard Street is a dirt road with no curb, no gutter, no sidewalk, and no sewer service. A property on Pollard was years ago approved to utilize an ejector pump on a 2-inch sewer line to pump its sewage into the end of the line sewer in front of my 844 Aspen. End of the line sewer. The septic at this residence had failed and sunk, and the land was not approvable for a new septic due to the swampy nature. This house was condemned, and the people of modest means found that solution. The solution has now impacted my 844 Aspen Street address over the past few winters by backing up the sewer line in a deluge of pumped water which freezes the sewer main line. And this has created a large issue requiring both the city and myself to jet wash large quantities of ice in order to restore service. In fact, it has been necessary to have every one of my properties on the sewer main cleaned with a sewer auger in the past 5 years, and some are fairly consistent every year or every other year, including ones with newer mains to the road. I have recently learned that the water and sewer junctions for this project are planned to be on Aspen Street side. Honestly, I'm appalled, and I can think of no reason that a high volume of commercial water and waste would be allowed through an older and already compromised system that, by the way, is clay tile, when Mitchell Street contains recently replaced water and sewer lines capable of commercial volume. I believe this speaks to the lack of proper infrastructure planning I have seen in this area and not taking the site variables into account. This section of Aspen Street only has sidewalk on one side of the street. We have a large amount of foot traffic utilizing the middle of the road for that reason. My understanding is that a sidewalk is planned for the east side of the street with this development, but I am unclear if that will extend the entire length of the 800 and 900 blocks of Aspen. The sidewalk currently stops at my 844 Aspen on the west side before reaching Pollard, and the entire 900 block has no sidewalk on either side. Visually, sitting on my deck right now, I can see Mitchell Street and Dairy Queen. I also see a natural landscape of large and small trees and bushes. This creates a pleasant view even in light of the fact that my block is essentially in the downtown commercial district. From the current site plan and variance request, it looks as if carports will be facing my property with a 4-story structure looming directly behind them. I feel it would be more aesthetically desirable to have a tree line of decent height separating what, let's face it, is almost a skyscraper in Cadillac from the older residential houses. The height and scope of this project is large. I'm concerned and honestly do not wish to stare at a 4-story structure basically in my front lawn when I sit on my deck. I'm concerned about property values, and I honestly don't understand in whose opinion property values in the area will increase by building such a large structure for large housing and traffic volume. Please note, I do not plan to sell. I plan to utilize my rentals as investment income, so to me, the desirability of tenants to live in my rentals with a small town feel, close-knit neighborhood, being close to town, shopping, and the lake are much more important to me and my ability to make a living than how much my property is worth on the market. Due to these facts, I submit that the standard that the requested variance will not unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area, in my estimation, needs to consider current residential rental rates. I feel this large structure and larger traffic volume will cause families to have less desire to rent my units because the street will lack this small town feel and traffic volume will make families with kids feel unsafe. Affordable housing is needed in the Cadillac area, and a well-built and managed structure for housing seniors is honestly a desirable use of this property and may indeed serve to increase the value, cash flow, and desirability of my neighborhood. I would absolutely approve of a smaller scale 2-story, say 24-unit structure. Another concern is one of the always possible failures of this business model to work. I think of another local community that approved a VA-only housing structure, only to find out later that the management company had reached an agreement with the state to house parolees in the facility also. I have no wish or desire to lend my support for a structure that would provide subsidized housing to a, quote, open class of people in my front yard. That being said, the standard that, quote, the requested variance will not impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city, end quote, is also an issue for me. First, please refer to the way I receive the majority of my income. Secondly, I refer to the fact that I'm disabled. My disabilities are psychological, and one of them is agoraphobia and anxiety disorder. It's very difficult for me to be here. I have a fear of people and the public. I've created a close-knit environment in my neighborhood, and my ownership of the housing around me is part of my strategy for coping with my condition. I'm aware I cannot control in a large sense something that happens to property that does not belong to me. However, it seems the code and ordinances were adopted for a reason. In the case that the proposed building does not meet those criteria, I feel that granting special land use permit and multiple variances to allow this structure will indeed affect my health, comfort, and welfare. I've been told by the city manager and the developer to visit the Clare Castle building to understand what I will be viewing in my front yard. It's interesting to note that the Clare Castle is a 24-unit structure, and the other one he refers to is a 30-unit structure. I find it hard to believe that viewing these would allow me to understand a 46-unit structure. I find To me, he has already proven he can be a profitable senior housing facility in a 24-unit range. And I believe reducing the number of units would decrease the footprint, and the proposed structure could comply with all current regulations. It is also important to note, and please correct me if I am wrong, that fundamentally the board is to look at the practical difficulty to the landowner. I appear before you as the landowner and taxpayer in the city. I believe, and you can quote me if I'm wrong, that Mr. Seibert holds options and is not currently a landowner. If I'm correct in that statement, I'm the landowner with practical difficulties surrounding this proposal, and Mr. Seibert is only a prospective interested party. I've heard this project helps and complies with the current city plan to, quote, increase density in the downtown business district, end quote. To that I ask, why are we trying to increase density? Some of us like living in a small town. I do not wish to live in a mini Traverse City. I was born in New York, Manhattan, and I was raised to the age of 13 in Chicago. I live here and invest here because it is a small town. And I see Pell's going away, and Pell's is small town. Pell's is what I came here for. I don't understand the vision and desire to make Cadillac something it's not. To recap, I believe allowing a variance for height or footprint of the proposed structure will impact the area negatively. I believe allowing a special land use permit for the proposed structure will impact the area negatively. I therefore, as a resident of the city of Cadillac and owner of lots 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, the entire vacated alley, 77, 78, 80, 81, 1, and 5 of the 800 block of Aspen and 200 block of Cottage, do object to the request for variances and special land use permit to build the proposed structure. I request you deny the special land use permit and keep the dialogue open for more conforming use of residential housing structure. I do thank you for considering my comments, and just in closing, I was reviewing a few things and I found this online. A young woman aged 14 years old wrote to the Planning Commission when you guys were looking at Cadillac Junction. I don't have permission from her to share it, but this was public. I'd like for you to pass it around and remember what she said, and remember what you're going through now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you write my name?
Yep.
Well, I didn't get to the not in favor of the project part yet, but we move there. Okay, anyone else here? Actually, I didn't get to the not in favor of this project yet, but that's okay.
I can go backwards.
I can go back. I can zig and zag. That's okay. You in favor of, or what do you want to be tonight?
I'm hungry.
Oh, so okay. How you doing?
Let's see. No, I oppose the project. Thank you, though. Shall I do this?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Give me a moment.
And your name for everyone, because I know it, but
Oh,
okay.
my name's Randy Lindell. Live in Cadillac. Actually, over 100 years ago, and it's still this plot of land that they want to build on is named the Lindell plot. And it goes back to 1890s even, which is interesting. So, but anyways, good evening. I oppose the project. I know our founding council members, former council members, many years ago, they arrived with these ordinances just for these types of situations. They wanted to keep the density of the town, small town feel, etc. We are growing at a tremendous rate, industry, etc., etc. But I'd just like to express the fact that we got the Cadillac Lofts project apartments coming in, Cadillac Junction out on West or East 55 going, if it ever happens. Whoever has the most money wins on that one. But and then the old, if you can remember the old drive-in theater, there's a apartment complex going in there now. But anyways, no to the special land use and the variances, the add-ons to the city ordinances that have already been written in stone, and any, what we call tweaking the ordinances, the height ordinances. No, the building's too tall. He may need to find it, a different area. Our city ordinance mandated that. We shouldn't add on to it for setbacks. And this complex will change the whole complexity of the surrounding area and downtown also. So the surrounding areas, the quality of the future of Cadillac, the project's too big. Environmentally, I don't know if you guys seen today's paper, but I was kind of set back, and I really, data shows that Lake Cadillac residents have shorter life expectancy. Year-long study shows neighborhoods that do and don't live the longest. What the heck's going on, And that's another thing with this tall building going up. Our airflow and everything, you're sitting down there at Herman's or Clam Lake and having dinner, and man, a nice diesel truck comes pouring down, and man, it's, that's the appetizer in itself. But no, and I think it was environmentally, it will restrict airflow, and just, living in that area will change the whole air quality of the surrounding neighborhood where this gentleman lives in also, and that, And I know there's a lot of things involved, tax issues, etc. I really believe we should see what the Cadillac Lofts turns out, and we should adhere to the standards of the city ordinances and not allow add-ons. And I think that's about it. So I wish the board would take a strong look at that. This was in today's paper about the area around Lake Cadillac have shorter life expectancies. And then, just a matter of fact, the dangers of Mitchell Street, with the heavy traffic, even though we've been cited at 9 or 10,000 and we're good for 14 to 15,000 vehicles. Let's keep our small town. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone else in our audience have anything this evening? Either against or in favor, I guess. Just tell me when you get there.
My name is Deborah Ish,
Hi, Deborah.
828 Aspen Street. So I am directly across the street from this project. The only thing I want to say to you this evening is, would you want this 4-story building in your front yard? That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Well, thank you, Deborah. Anyone else in the audience? Anything else? Hi.
Hello.
Based on your shirt, are you the auto brokers across the street from this?
I am, and your neighbor as well.
I thought so.
Would you like my business address or my home address?
I wasn't going there, it was neutral, but hi, Jason.
Would you like my home address or my business address?
Your home.
Home, please.
Yeah, my name is Jason Hoffman. I do own the auto brokers across the street. I'll be the outcast. I am in support of the project. I think it's a great addition to Main Street. The gentleman that spoke first this evening has some great points, so I would certainly hope that the Planning Commission takes into account some of his concerns as a landlord and gentleman who's helped improve the area over time. So that was all new information that I read tonight or heard tonight. So I certainly have some support for his concerns as well of the infrastructure, sewer, things of that. Being a past landlord, I know the problems that can cause. So I guess I would certainly hope that the Planning Commission addresses some of that as well. But as I've been in the city of Cadillac since 1989. I've lived in the city my whole time I've been in Cadillac, and I've owned the property across the street for 10 years. So I remember the old Johnny's building that was there, and for 10 years we've always wondered what would go in there, and I support the project. So I'll just leave it at that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone else in the audience have anything? Bill, do you want to respond to anything? Don't have to. Not a problem. Okay. At this time, I'll go ahead and close public hearing. Okay, so that's done right now. I also, like Jason had mentioned, I'm a landlord in other spots too, and I'm unaware of the water and sewer issues on that street, which I had issues with some of mine. So anyway, I'm gonna look to staff here for a second on some of that, if maybe could. I feel what he's telling us is truthful, of course, and not being, I guess, aware of if that doesn't handle this, that'll actually make things worse. To me, that would be a huge concern, but because we're going to have a whole bunch more people in water and stuff. I don't know, so I guess I'm
Well,
reaching out.
all I can say is, the utility department has not come forward with service or capacity issues. If somebody wanted to be detailed about what they experienced, and does it have any connection at all to this project, I'm sure we could make that part of the storm drain review and approval. I don't know that just hearing the comments tonight, whether the problems that they've experienced have anything to do with the system that's being redesigned for this project. So I wouldn't necessarily marry the two together without knowing exactly what the situation is. But I talked specifically with Jeff Dietland and Dave Stearns, and they, in some ways, think that we can clean up a lot of issues with this project, and that it's a chance to formally secure proper easements for the storm drains in that system, which I don't believe currently exists today. So in some ways, I think it's a chance to correct and improve upon the system as opposed to make it worse.
I would support what John is saying, and when I was reading through all of the concerns of Daryl, that one really popped out to me, because if we move forward on this, perhaps this is an opportunity to benefit your properties if there's infrastructure problems there. If you all knew Jeff Dietland like we know Jeff Dietland, he would never let this project go forward with ill-advised infrastructure. He would make sure that every aspect of this project is going to be well thought out. It's too bad he couldn't be here this evening, because he could speak to it a whole lot better than I can.
Sure, I mean, he could talk about his experiences in that area. I can say that I was out on the Dollar General site to look at their retention areas during a fairly heavy rain, and was not seeing a buildup of water in the retention ponds. I don't know what that means, but usually when you see serious problems, you see the water start to rise and grow, and you start to worry about where it might go or what it might do. But and this might not have been it was a fairly heavy rain, but I don't know how it ranked on what year storm I might have been watching. So
Well, to one of your conditions, didn't you talk about, you did talk about it, final storm drainage design be approved by the city's utility department and the city's consulting engineer. Is that who Dave Stearns is?
Yes, that would be Jeff and Dave, and it would also be Connie Haug from
Arlington, yeah.
Prine and Newhoff. And one would be looking at the system, the other one would be looking at the year storm that we're required to design to, which is a 10-year storm. So they'd be looking at two different things, but similar things.
Also, I'm kind of interested in his concern about air quality. I hadn't heard this concern pop up before, and what sort of impact that a building of this height or size, whatever, would
Well,
have
given
to do
the,
with air quality.
I would think very little. I mean, obviously, there would be very minor issues with some increased traffic, but quite frankly, building this property up for any of the approved uses would probably equal or exceed what is being proposed as part of the apartment project. If you had a warehouse, or if you had a hospital or a health facility or assisted living facility, I mean, I would have to believe that it would be every bit as much or more, and maybe in some cases more, truck traffic. I would think you would see very little truck traffic connected to this project. And there's no output, there's no manufacturing, there's no, it's, there'd probably be running air conditioners, but I don't see that affecting air quality very much. And the traffic, they will have a primary access onto Mitchell, and quite frankly, I think that would be the most used, with the exception of those folks that might, like I said in my report, during busy periods, want to travel northbound, because that requires a left turn movement as opposed to a right turn movement. If they want to go south and out of town, they're probably just going to go out to Mitchell and turn right, because it's fairly easy to do. So I think whatever air quality issues there might be, it would not be any different, and maybe even worse for other kinds of projects.
I think this gentleman here tonight has brought out another problem in the particular area regarding the sanitary sewer system. There's been discussion regarding storm, which needs to be taken care of, but we also need some assurances that the sanitary situation is blended with what the city needs.
I mean, certainly you can make that a condition of the approval, that staff secure the necessary assurances from the utility department that the sanitary system is sound and able to secure and handle the flows that would come from this project.
Something like that in our approval, I think, would be appropriate.
I don't disagree. I think that would be
And
good.
I think we could be assured of that, because if we were to not address those things on the front end of a project such as this, then the city staff or the utilities department would be dealing with it afterwards, and they would never set themselves up or our customers up for such a situation.
I think what you would do is just expand upon condition one and expand it to
Water and sewer.
to talk about the soundness of the system and its ability to accept the new volumes that are being supplied and disposed of.
John, did you say there's 115 egresses a day? So is that 115 coming in and 115 leaving?
No, that's trip ends. When you leave, it's a trip end, and when you come back, it's a trip end.
Okay, so you have, let's figure 8 o'clock to 8 p.m., 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You have 9 vehicles leaving per hour, right? And then if you divide that by, they can go south or east, or west. So it's 4.5. I'm very concerned about traffic on your street. When I moved here, one of the reasons I moved where I did was because there was no traffic and I had 4 small kids. So that hit home. So that's when I did the math. You're not going to see a whole bunch of traffic there. It's going to come out 4.5 cars. You should be fine if that number's correct. All right, if that helps you, I hope it does. That would make me feel a heck of a lot better because I don't know what the traffic is on your street already. Secondly, the Mitchell Street currently doesn't have a turn zone in it, turn lane in that area, that I remember.
It doesn't. The center.
And I don't mean to sound stereotypical, but my mother pulled out in front of somebody and got plowed when she was in her 70s, right? You have the older people pulling out there or into there without a turn lane. I would certainly suggest that we look at it. I don't know what you can do about it, but I think you should look into that. Or make this one way, which would hurt you in this fact, have you come in from the Mitchell side and leave from the Aspen side. Because then nobody's pulling out into Mitchell. But you still have to cross Mitchell, so I'm not sure if that's a 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But it does concern me. So that's about all I have to say on that. Whether you agree or disagree, that's just the way I feel about it, so.
I was looking at the photos here of Harbor View. That's 6 stories.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's in a zoning district that is less dense than the Aspen Street property. That's an RM2, which is a higher density zoning district than the RM1. In fact, Kirtland Terrace is in an RM1 as well, and that exceeds.
7.
Yeah, so there you have 2 taller buildings in zoning districts that are actually intended to be lower in density.
Could they make a condition to buffer it with some trees, rather than deciduous trees, maybe some evergreens or something that would buffer the site a little more?
Yeah, certainly there's an opportunity to put trees on the private side. There's opportunities to put trees in the public side if room exists. I mean, obviously, depending on what you put in there, depending on whether it's evergreen or deciduous and the height, obviously you can see a tree grow anywhere from 10 feet in height to 50 feet in height. But I mean, with a canopy, in terms of things that are taller than that, it could, shield views to upper floors, I would imagine. Likewise, I suppose we could evaluate the public side of either side of the street and see if additional trees would alleviate the situation.
I know that one thing that they did up at Kirtland Terrace was, at first, when they put in their carports, they put a back on the carports, and the neighbors were very upset because it kind of blocked their whole view of downtown. And so they took those solid backs off and they put like a lattice on there that they could grow vines and, make it look nice, but it still had some privacy, but an open feeling as well.
These were open.
Yeah,
These are open, yeah.
Nowadays, there's more and more concern about being able to see on a site.
So police can see through there and
Yeah,
know that it's safe, yeah.
right, and so sometimes the more open styles are desired nowadays because people feel more secure with them.
Joe? Good?
Yeah. I share Mr. Peterson's concern as to the sanitary sewer, but
So do I, big time.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, the variances that we're talking about are to allow the building to be higher and allow more of the property to be used. It's not whether this particular use is appropriate or not, because it would be conforming otherwise. So no tree immediately is going to be big enough to block 15 feet at the top, and nothing's going to particularly fix the existence of carports, even trees in particular. So I personally believe it's a great use for Cadillac in that south end of town, and I recognize the concerns otherwise. But
it also gives us a chance to look at the sewers too.
yes,
Agreed. Which I figure should be part of our motion.
It should be part of our motion, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
John, can I ask just a question on the motion? Actually, you mentioned that the commission has to mention specifically the things we went through. To what specificity?
Well, you would just have to say that your motion is based upon the project with the conditions that you're imposing, that you feel that those meet the special use standards as I identified in the report. So you don't have to walk through each one and say how you think it does. You just have to say, we believe it meets the standards if you do the following things or you meet the following conditions.
That we met the 9 zoning ordinance standards?
Right,
Would that be appropriate?
right. And one of them's not
How
applicable.
bold can we be for Daryl here if he gets backed up and stuff that he's buying?
I'm actually adding that right now.
Okay, all right. You go on that. Good. Because I feel his issues are,
Well, you need to determine whether it's the individual
There.
sewer lateral that's causing the problem,
Right.
or if it's the actual city main. And
yeah,
Jeff can do that,
yep, yep.
but it's something he needs to look into, yeah.
I don't mean to speak out of place, but the issue at 844 with the line being frozen is a city-approved issue with a 2-inch line ejector pump, and it injects all 500 gallons all at once. They've come out, dealt with it, said, well, it shouldn't have happened, but it was approved, here it is, live with it. That's what I get. And I'm scared that that's what I'm gonna get. Well, it was approved, live with it. Sorry.
I don't like that either. So Kevin's working on that right now. Kevin's,
I gotta laugh. I'm the only
Oh.
sewer line on my street that freezes every year, so I understand that.
were you told to live with it?
Don't
No,
visit-
because I got a temper.
Oh.
And I got connections.
I know, yeah. okay.
Don't visit your house in the winter. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, really, if you do, never mind.
Stand out of the way.
Yeah, stay out of the way. No, it's just a pain in the butt. It's happened about 4 times. And it freezes right on the other side of the street in the main, so each time. It's actually my water, not my sewer, so.
Still.
Remember?
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Well, Kevin is formulating some of his information. Anyway. We did have, quote, a letter. Do I need to put that into the minutes here, or are you gonna put it in here that we
Yeah,
were
I think
given?
you just need to mention the letter and who it's
letter
from
by
and that it's going to be, become
Kathy
part of the
Lowy.
record. And you might as well
in
mention.
favor of this project, getting people into her office every week, looking for rentals, yet affordable ones. New building would help accommodate that need in an excellent location. Thank you for supporting the need for good housing in Cadillac, anyway.
That's also the clientele. They're not gonna be out there
Right.
dancing in the parking lot. They're not gonna be raising a lot of heck out there, so. I mean,
And-
if you're gonna put it there, that's,
And you can, just acknowledge the handout from Mr.
Oh,
Fish
yes.
as well.
Sorry,
To say that in addition to his readout of his letter, that it was a written
Actually,
copy
he
submitted.
did a heck of a nice job in multiple colors,
I
so.
never got a copy of it. Can I have it?
Yeah, of course you can.
No, you're good, you're good.
Of Daryl Ish presenting a nice presentation to us as well. And do we have to make comments of MDOT to review stuff as well? Is there anything that can be done as far as in and outs? Probably a bad question on my part, but Hegstrom building part of this?
No,
No.
no, that
That's a
lady
bugger
is-
pulling out,
she's
pulling
in
out
there.
of the,
It's a bugger to
Willow.
pull out of Cobb Street.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is a real quick fix to it would be put a turn lane in there. So at least you can sit and wait rather than having a bunch of people pile up behind you. And I'm not gonna say Mitchell's real busy, but it can be.
It can be,
It can be.
yeah.
So that's my concern.
That's all going to be controlled by him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah,
you're gonna
agreed.
talk to these people about that and say, hey, is there anything we have to do? It may be nothing you can do. I don't know. I'd just like you to ask the question.
Yeah.
As there's greater development at that end of town,
Yes.
maybe
Well,
the
now you
needs
have-
change, but that's gonna
have the
be up to
Willow.
Rick Leptek.
Yeah, you have Will, and you have all these businesses that are coming in here. And it's a pain to go across.
Oh, boy. Yep.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've lived in Providence, Rhode Island is where I came from, so I know what you're talking about, traffic. And I know what it's like sitting for 20 minutes waiting to get through, so you're not gonna have that here, but you do have traffic, so. Okay, this is why,
Yes, sir.
hear me out.
Oh, yeah.
The final storm drainage, A. B, require permits by state, federal agencies. C, the variance requests that are under consideration by City Zoning Board of Appeals be obtained. The developer obtain a curb permit, that's normal stuff, you're gonna have to do that. The adjoining Aspen Street utilities are adequate and will be reviewed for adequacy. Does that sound about right, or does that not work?
I think the only problem in that wording is it has to be connected to this project. I think logically you can make the connection if this project is making another line worse, but if it's a situation that has nothing to do with this project,
Is it connected?
meaning that the things that are leaving this site don't go through the same pipes that there's a problem with, you can't marry those two problems together if they're not logically associated.
Okay. Are you going to connect to the Aspen Street or stay on Mitchell Street?
Could you come up here so that people listening from home could hear you? Sorry,
Yeah,
John.
no, because
Okay.
Bob can't, I know.
Okay.
Bob can't.
So, as I remember in your packet, there was a proposed motion, and that motion is conditioned upon the conditions that are on the screen, which means that in order for me to proceed, with construction, I have to satisfy those conditions. So if there's concern about water and sanitary, I would suggest that we simply add to that first condition that final storm drainage design, or final storm drainage, sanitary, and water design be approved by the city's utilities. Because
That'll take
if we get an allocation, we're gonna have our engineer put together all the engineering drawings. We did sit down with your utilities department as well as Connie Hauk, and we reviewed those plans, and that's sort of where, there didn't seem to be any concern about capacity issues in the lines in Aspen, and that's what we took off from. Now, if we get to a design issue, when we do the engineering and they find issues, then maybe we'll need to take one of those utilities out to Mitchell. I don't know until we get across that threshold, but making it subject to review and approval by your utilities director should resolve those sorts of concerns. And we're willing to, because we got to go through that process anyways.
anyway, that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, it's just part of the normal process.
Because
Because we don't want to build a project that, I mean, I don't want to build a project that's going to have sanitary sewer problems, believe me. I'm going to have 46 residents that,
Yeah. And you don't want to be told, well, it's supposed to work.
right.
Yeah, well,
And there.
yeah.
That would be my suggestion, simply
Okay.
add that to condition number 1.
Very good, Phil. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that. That actually
Yeah.
makes it looks cleaner.
Okay. Well then,
So who wants to make a motion here?
Go ahead.
Oh, I used to do this to Denny Benson all the time.
Go ahead.
Okay,
all right.
I propose a motion for the final storm drainage, sanitary, and water lines to be are reviewed and approved by the city's utility department and city's consulting engineer. Is that good? The other B, C, and D maintain themselves, right? And you said something about putting Daryl's,
Well, I'd like him to have some assurance somehow, if this all gets tied together. I understand John's point. If it isn't tied together,
then it
okay.
doesn't
But
matter.
the motion actually is gonna start out differently than, you're talking about the conditions.
Yeah.
So there's a motion
Here's
first.
the start of the motion here I had written.
Yeah.
That you gotta also allude back to the standards. So this could be the start of the motion. And then the second part of the motion is the conditions.
Okay.
And so you could run from this and then simply have this with the first one, just simply adding the sanitary and water lines being added to the storm drain design to be added to that review.
So I'll make a motion for the first page. I'll make a motion for the second page with the additions that we talked.
Of the sanitary and the water being approved by the city's utility
Because
department.
it has to be anyway, so, but, and then the required permits, the rest of them stand on their own. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add?
No, I just want to make sure he doesn't have issues.
I want to make sure that he doesn't have issues too. I mean,
Agreed.
I honestly think this is a good thing to go in there. If you look, I've been here for 25 years, I think. And as I've come in here, every time I come from the south side and go north, it just looks like urban blight, for lack of anything else. This building is good looking. It'll be maintained, or this guy wouldn't be in business. The height, I'm not sure if a 24 or 2-story would be any worse than a 50-story, because it's there. Does that make sense?
Trust me, it would. You're welcome to come stand on my deck.
No, I mean, I understand. What I'm saying is I'm not sure how that would affect it. A 4-story is a business decision by this man here, and he's doing that because it makes sense for him. So,
I'll support the motion.
okay, thank you. I'm rambling.
Roll, please.
Bauman,
Yes.
Filkins,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Fent,
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you for bringing everything to our attentions, and I really hope that this gets fixed for you. Okay? I really do.
May I say something to him?
Sure, please.
Daryl, I just want to say that, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking the time to put this information together. And additionally, for everything that you've done for that neighborhood. I live on Granite Street, and I've watched over the years, I do come through there because I go to Family Fair, Dollar General, I shop at the south end of Cadillac. But there's been a noticeable improvement, and I know it's because of your oversight, so thank you.
You're welcome to hang out and listen to us ramble through the rest of this, or you can leave. I mean, I'm inviting you to stay, but I'm just also giving you an opportunity